Hi, everyone. I want to welcome you to our New and Now series. So we are going over the HubSpot product updates for October 2024. So we're coming to you a little week earlier than usual. So not quite finished with October, but we'll be looking back over all of the new updates. So if you're first time joining in, my name is Alexis, and I'm a HubSpot certified trainer here on the Simple Strat team. So just here to welcome you in. So our New and Now series is really designed to, again, cover any of the new updates we've recently released. But really what we're setting apart is making sure that we give you some real use case examples and things that can really take your portal to the next level and give you real impact. So be sure to, stay connected with me, with Tyler, with Simple Strat. That way you don't miss out on these webinars every month. So coming up today, not quite as exciting as last month where we had all the stuff going on from Inbound, but still plenty of updates to go over. So there'll be some things about payments, list updates, new workflow capabilities. There's some stuff going on with association labels that I know I have used so much over the last 2 weeks. I've had multiple projects on it, so that's really cool. And then always looking at AI and what new stuff is coming out with that. So tons more to come up soon. For our general housekeeping, as usual, be sure to drop those questions in the Q&A, and we'll be sure to answer them towards the end of today's session. If you've missed anything or you join late, that's okay. We'll have it recorded, and you will get a copy sent out in the next day or two. So don't worry if you miss out on a little bit. And then always just be sure to follow along. We mentioned like what updates apply to what licenses and things like that. So sometimes just a couple of those updates is really worth the extra push to get that upgrade. So be sure to just make sure you tag along with all of that. So again, if you're not familiar with Simple Strat, if it's your first time joining in, we are a diamond level solutions partner for HubSpot. So we do a lot of education, a lot of assistance in different ways. So whether you have questions about upgrading HubSpot, what licenses should you be buying, maybe setting up new features like we're going to be covering today. Maybe you have a really messy portal and you just need help. We do portal audits and things as well to make sure you get your system up and running. So if you have any questions, you can always contact us and check us out at simplestrat.com/consult. All right, well, I'm going to hand it on over to my fearless leader here, Tyler Samani-Sprunk, and he will get us started on today's updates.
Awesome. Thank you, Alexis. Welcome back, everyone that's been here before, and welcome in to all of our new folks. Alexis mentioned there's not quite as many updates as last time, but the product team at HubSpot, I feel like, never sleeps. They must have like a Red Bull drinking fountain in there or something, because there is still a lot of updates. So as per usual, I am going to talk fast. You will get the recording and the slides after, so if I go a little bit too fast through something, I apologize in advance. We want to make sure that we get all of the impactful updates out to you, as well as go through some of those use cases to make sure that you know how to put them into action right away to help get more value out of the platform for you. So if you are here for the first time, I'll just give you a quick rundown of what you can expect to see on this slide. So what you're going to see is the name of the update. And this, we try our best to use the exact same name that HubSpot uses. So if you need to go back and search for that update in the product update section of your portal to enroll in a beta, learn more about it, you can search for the name that's right on the slide. And then below that, we'll talk about the status. So the status is either going to be private beta. That's a beta that you have to request access and be approved to get into. Those are usually pretty restricted. Public beta means that it's in beta, but anybody can join it as long as you've got the right licensing. And then the last one would be live, which means it's already available to you in your portal. Right below that, we'll talk about the hubs that is available for, so Marketing Hub, Sales Hub, etc., and then the tiers, so whether that's available to everybody, starter customers, professional customers, enterprise customers. So without further ado, let's dive into the updates. We're going to be leading off with the updates that apply to all of the hubs. So it doesn't matter what hub you have, as long as you have the right level, you will have access to it. So our first update here is going to be one of those that everybody gets access to, and this is in public beta right now. And this is an update to the active lists tool. So for a long time, if you were building static lists and there was particular people that you didn't want to be on that list, it was really easy to get them off of that list. But for active lists, that same thing was actually really, really hard to do. If they met the criteria of the filters that you had set, they were going to be in that list unless you kind of build some more complicated filters to exclude specific people or specific lists. So the two updates here, one, it's much, much easier to exclude lists. So rather than having to create a filter and say is not a member of this list, and it's like 10 clicks to create that filter, just right here in the settings tab of the list once you are enrolled in the beta. And you can also do that for individual contacts. So you can exclude up to 5 lists, up to 25 contacts from an active list. So why might you want to do that? A couple use cases here. One use case that I really like is if you have an email exclusion list, so a list of folks that you don't want to get your marketing emails, rather than every time you create that marketing email, you're adding the list you want to send to, and you're adding an exclusion list, you can just add that exclusion list one time to your active list that you're sending to. And then all those folks will be excluded, and it's a much quicker way of sending out those emails and a more surefire way to make sure that that exclusion list never gets missed as you send out and your team sends out those marketing emails. Then another use case here is maybe you've got internal or test contacts that are constantly in your active list because they filled out so many test forms and things like that. You can make sure those folks are excluded very easily. And then there also may be times where a contact is kind of one of those edge case contacts. So they meet the criteria of the filters. They've got all the properties or whatever you're filtering on to be in that list. But for whatever reason, they're an edge case and you don't want them on that particular active list. Rather than go in and create a custom property to manage this or kind of override the properties that they have, you can just add them to that second box there in the list settings. So nice little tool for us to keep our lists clean and with the folks that we want to be on that list. So moving on from lists, we've got a few updates to emails in HubSpot. So this first update here is for our one-to-one emails. So this is for emails that you go into a record and you're hitting email from within the CRM, or you're enrolling them in a sequence using an email template. So users can have multiple email addresses associated to their user accounts. You got different domains or different email addresses for the same domain that they're sending from. That's not new, but in the past, unless they wanted to send an email from the first email connected to their user, they always had to go to this drop down and select a different email address. So if they added a different email address after their first one, but that's the one they use most commonly, it was a huge pain to always have to use that drop down. That's what HubSpot's changing for us. Now you can go to that drop down once, edit the default, and now you'll only have to use that drop down if you have a different email address than whatever default you select. So ability to select a default email address for those one-to-one emails. And more updates for emails. So HubSpot, as you may know, has a never log setting, which basically means that if I email this specific email address or this specific email domain, I don't want that email to be tracked in my HubSpot. So it's commonly used for things like emails to your legal team or your accounting team or things like that, or internal emails. Unfortunately, for a long time, HubSpot didn't use that setting whenever it was a team email. So if it was an email from your conversations inbox or your help desk, it didn't pay attention to those never log settings. And that's what they're changing now. If you have that, an email address or a domain in your never log settings, and you email them from the inbox or the help desk, that won't be logged to that record. And more email updates. Like I said, lots of email updates, lots of small ones here, but nice quality of life updates here. This is probably an update that most of us won't have to use. And if we do have to use it, probably only once. But it's also that update that if you ever have to use it, you're going to be really, really glad that it's there. So it's going to be primarily for if your company ever goes through a rebrand or for whatever reason changes your domain that all of your users' email addresses are on. Rather than going in and asking each email user to go in and kind of re-add their email address, now you can change their email domain in bulk. So you can change it for all of the users in your portal so that if you ever go through that process, it is much, much easier, especially for those accounts that have a lot of users. All right, enough about email for now. We're going to talk about merges. So this is one of those unsexy updates that is very, very important for you to understand because it is kind of subtle. and has big implications for your data in HubSpot. So I will say right now, this is only in private beta, and it won't launch live until early next year. But what they're doing is when you merge two records, so merge two contacts, two companies, whatever, whether that's in the duplicate tool or just manually outside of the duplicate tool, the properties that are kept on that merged record are changing. So I'm going to give you a very text-heavy slide just so you have it for reference when you get the slides and download. But here is what the old behavior was and what the new behavior is. So when you merge records, the record ID, it used to keep, so whenever you merge records, you choose a primary record. It used to keep the record ID of that primary record. And now what's changing is it's going to create a brand new ID. It will keep the IDs from the primary and the secondary record associated to that new record so that if you ever do an API request or something like that, it still is going to find the right contact or the right record for you. For most other properties, except for the custom properties or specific properties we're going to talk about below, what used to happen is it would have kept the most recently updated value for each property, regardless of which record that was on. Now it's going to keep the value of the primary record. So that's going to be the biggest difference here. And then there isn't any changes to the specific property rules that HubSpot has. So lifecycle stages, it's going to keep whatever lifecycle stage is the furthest down the funnel. Analytics properties, where it's totaling the number of page views and things like that, it's going to continue to recalculate based on the activities of both of the records being merged. Original source, it's going to continue to prioritize the oldest value or the manually updated value. And then this last one, I'll be honest with you, because it's in private beta, I haven't had a chance to test this yet. I haven't had a chance to get access, and the documentation confused me a lot. So this one is going to be one that's going to require some further testing. We do know that there is a change to association. So when you're merging two records and the secondary record has associations, what used to happen is all the associations of the primary record and the secondary record would stay associated to the merged record. What's changing now is I don't really know. So what they've said in the documentation is they're prioritizing the associations from the primary record. What's unclear is if they're totally dropping the associations of the secondary record, or if they're just dropping association labels when association labels conflict. So for example, record A has a primary company associated to it, record B has a primary company associated to it, and those two companies are different. I think what's happening is both companies will be associated and they're just dropping the label from the primary label of that second company because you only have one primary company for contacts. But they weren't very clear in the documentation. So again, that one's going to require some testing, and hopefully I'll be able to get back to you as this launches publicly with a clearer answer there. So sorry for getting so technical, but I think that one's important. Let's move to some updates that are a little bit more fun. So if you are using calling tools that aren't HubSpot's calling, so you're using AirCall, Kixie, you name it, for all of your outbound calls, you can make them through HubSpot, but all of your inbound calls, you had to use that separate dialer tool. So that is now going away. What HubSpot is doing is they've made an update to their API. So now those calling tools can make it so that those inbound calls, you can get a notification directly in HubSpot, answer that directly in HubSpot, and use that third-party tool without having to leave the HubSpot platform. Now, what I want to make sure and emphasize here is what they've launched as a beta for that API. So the calling tools themselves now need to go use that API beta. So if you're using a third-party calling tool, my recommendation is to look into whether they have this feature already, which I doubt it, or reach out to them and see where in their product roadmap they're planning to launch this feature, or if they're planning to launch this feature. So it'll be up to the calling tools to actually incorporate this into their tool. But I think most of the big ones will. AirCall has big HubSpot investment. Kixie pays a lot of attention to their HubSpot integration, for example. So I think we'll see those most popular calling tools integrate this very quickly. And then another tool that's a little bit, it's going to require a developer, but for folks that have a mobile app. So you've got an Android app, an iOS app, maybe that's your product, or you give it to your customers as part of a service delivery. What you can now do is you can now put HubSpot chat directly in that app. So whether you want to do support requests or any sort of chatting with customers back and forth, or even use a chat bot, you can now do that directly in your app, and HubSpot's making that very easy. So what they've provided is a snippet of code that your developers can just add into the mobile app. similar to like adding a tracking code to your website. And then that chat will be available in your web app based on the settings that you have configured in HubSpot on that chat tool. So you create the chat, select mobile. As long as they've got this code added to the app, then that chat will now appear directly in app for your customers. So a nice, cool update for folks that have apps. And for everybody else, you don't have to have an app or external calling tool. Everybody can get advantage of this new reporting tool as long as you've got a professional level subscription or higher. This is going to be a much needed update to make our table reports in HubSpot much easier to kind of get a nice insight at a glance, right? So rather than just seeing a table of data, we can now color code that data for any number property, currency property, percent, or duration. We can color code that based on settings that we have. So we can look at a report very quickly at a glance, understand what's going on with that data. Is it red and bad, green and good, or somewhere in the middle? And you can, of course, customize those colors. So some use cases for this. Maybe you want to compare sales rep performance based on the deals that they're working. So I want to very quickly at a glance see what reps are best at time to close or average deal amount, and I can color code that data to get that insight. Maybe I want to do the same thing, but based on the activities they're logging rather than their deal data, so I can do that. Moving on to our service reps, maybe I want to compare reps and perform in their performance by things like time to close for tickets, satisfaction scores. And then moving on from reps, I can start to evaluate my customers. So if we're using our customer health score feature that HubSpot released fairly recently, I can color code accounts in a table based on that health score. Or I can help my reps prioritize their new leads and give them a nice color-coded table of their leads based on their lead score. So great way to turn those table reports from just a table of data into something that's more quickly actionable with that conditional formatting. Oh, and I've got one more. What surprised me, one more use case. We can show a list of deals color-coded based on their win probability. So again, helping our folks prioritize and take action on the stuff that's most likely to close most quickly. All right, that was the last one. Another update to static lists. So this one, so they've said in the documentation that it's enterprise only. Although I did see somebody from HubSpot's product team on LinkedIn say that they were going to roll this out to everybody when it rolls out of public beta. HubSpot as a company has not said that officially, so I've got it enterprise only for now, but hoping this one comes out to everybody. So this is another tool for our active lists. So active lists, remember, they are going to continuously update contacts, add and remove contacts based on filters that we have set for that list. But maybe we only want them to be active for a certain period of time. So for example, we only want them to be active up until a campaign is done or an email is sent. And then we want to preserve all of the people that were on that list at that time. And so what this allows you to do is automatically set a date, either a calendar date or a date based on inactivity, or when that list is going to convert from an active list to a static list. So at that time, it'll stop updating and it will retain all of the contacts or all the records that were on the list at the time that it converted. So nice little tool there to kind of preserve those records. All right, and then the last update that applies to all the hubs, the next batch of updates, don't worry, they apply to most hubs. It's our multi-hub section. But this is the last one that applies to all the hubs. And this is one of those updates that I think is going to have a relatively narrow set of use cases initially. But why I included it is because I'm really excited by kind of what it promises for what HubSpot AI is going to be able to do to continue to make our life easier in the platform. So the way that this works is that if you save a note in HubSpot, AI can look at that note and say, there's some stuff in this note that I think you might want to store in a property on this record. So in this example, that note had a postal code and an address, and HubSpot is suggesting that we save that postal code and that address in that activity. So we still have to manually save it. So it's not going to, AI overload, they're going to start overwriting our data. But it does give us a nice way to make sure that our records are enriched with all the information we already know. And right now it's only for notes, but what really excites me is when this is going to be available for things like emails or call transcripts. Again, just to make sure all that data isn't just living in a text block somewhere, but it's in the properties that are powering our workflows and our lists and are available in all of our views. So a really cool AI tool, really interesting to see how the HubSpot product team is thinking about AI to help make our lives easier. All right, so moving into our section of updates here that don't apply to all the hubs, but they apply to more than just one of them. So this is going to be a lot of workflow tools and things like that. But before we get into that, I want to give you a quick shout out for a new tool that we just launched. Our team was actually actively setting it up yesterday. I think it went live this morning. So hot off the presses here, really trying to help folks make sure that they can kind of hit 2025 with the ground running. Their HubSpot is good to go. They've got any issues worked out there. And so what this is a quick assessment. You go to simplestrat.com/growth assessment or scan that QR code there. It'll pop open a quick survey. You answer a few questions about how you're using HubSpot and how HubSpot is helping you or maybe not. And then it's going to give you a nice little grade and rating based on that. So you can start to see, okay, am I ready to go into next year? Or are there some things that I should be working on? So definitely check that out. It's free, simplestrat.com/growth assessment or that QR code. All right, back to our update. So this is the one that I think is Alexis's favorite for the week or the month rather. So this update allows you to have a lot more control related to association labels when you're creating records in a workflow. So in the past, when you went to create a record in the workflow, you were creating a deal, creating a contact, whatever from a workflow, you could say, yep, associate the new records, all the contacts that were associated to the one that enrolled in the workflow, or yep, associate it to all the companies. You couldn't apply specific labels, and you couldn't pick and choose, like if you were creating a company from a contact or whatever, you couldn't pick and choose what you wanted to associate within each record type. And so now you have a lot more control over that. You can do this for records you're creating as well as tasks. So I know that that might sound a little nebulous. So let's get into like some specific use cases and ways that you might use this. So let's say you automatically create renewal deals. So when one deal closes, when your original sale deal closes, you've got a workflow that goes in and creates a new renewal deal. But let's say that renewal deal or that original deal is associated with all kinds of contacts. You had all kinds of people in the buying committee for that first deal. But for renewals, you just have to work with one point of contact or maybe 2 points of contact that are going to manage that renewal. So you don't want that renewal deal to be associated to all the contacts from the original deal. You just want it associated to the contacts from the original deal that have a label that suggests they'll still be relevant for the renewal deal. So you can choose only those labels and only associate those contacts to that new deal. So that's kind of how it works. You do the same thing. Let's say you create a deal upon form submission. Let's say that form submission is coming in from a partner and partner submitted leads. We've got a whole HubSpot hack video that kind of shows you how to use association labels to track those referrals. But what this tool would be really helpful for is copying those association labels from contact records onto the deals that are being created upon that form submission. So now I can look at the deal and see what partner or client maybe referred that deal over to us. We can also use this if we're automatically creating tickets for onboarding. So when a deal closes, we're creating our onboarding ticket. Again, we had a big buying committee with the CFO. We had all kinds of people involved in the original deal, but there's only one point of contact record that we want associated to that onboarding ticket. We just copy them over to the ticket rather than all of our contacts. So lots of use cases there. There are many, many more, but hopefully that gets your wheels turning on how to use that tool there. So another workflow update. We're going to see 2 updates this month to the Microsoft Teams integration. HubSpot's really been enhancing their integration with Microsoft Teams over the last year. This one here allows you to automatically add contacts from HubSpot to a Microsoft Teams webinar using a workflow. So it's this workflow action right here. If you've ever used Zoom webinars and HubSpot, it's the exact same thing. It's just applicable to Microsoft Teams now via the Microsoft Teams integration and this workflow action. So basically, you've been through this flow because you're at this webinar. So this is the Zoom webinar, but it's the exact same flow now for Microsoft Teams. The big thing that unlocks here is you can use a HubSpot landing page to collect registrations. So you can customize the look of that. You can get all of your HubSpot analytics that you know and love. You can use smart content or personalization tokens on there. You don't have to rely on the Microsoft Teams registration page anymore. Then you put a HubSpot form on that. Again, all the HubSpot analytics, ask whatever questions you want. And then once they submit that form, you've got a simple workflow that enrolls them to the Microsoft Teams webinar so that they get the link and all of that stuff that they need to be able to attend. So nice simple workflow there that really unlocks a lot more customization on the front end registration flow for the folks that are signing up for your webinars. All right, back to some calling updates here. This one, again, documentation says Sales and Service Hub. I would expect this to roll out more widely when it comes out of beta. But what HubSpot gave us a little while ago, might have been last month or the month before, is we can make calls from this little call icon in the top bar. So we no longer had to go into a contact record and find their phone number, then hit call from there. We could just do it from wherever we were in the platform. But the problem was when they first announced it, you had to know the phone number. You could type in a phone number here, but you couldn't search for anybody. That's the change now, is you can type in the contact name and call them directly from here. So if you don't know their phone number, you know their name, still don't want to go through all those clicks to find that contact record, you can do that right from the top bar. And another calling update. This is another one of those examples that's just kind of astounding and what you can do with AI. So this update, it's in private beta. I expect it to be a little clunky for now until it comes out live. But what it allows you to do is it allows you to chat with Copilot during live calls, which sounds interesting, but what's more interesting is that it's going to have the context of the person you're talking to and the conversation you've had so far available in the chat. So let's talk about some use cases and why that part of it is so important. So within the private beta, HubSpot's given us kind of 3 prompts that was like, hey, check these prompts out. So we're pretty sure that these prompts work pretty well. So can you draft notes for this call so far? Help me draft a follow-up email for this call. Does this caller have any open tickets or deals? But what I'm really excited for is that last bullet point. Does this caller have any open tickets or deals? That's where we start getting in. We've got the context of the contact we're talking to. And that, I think, is where the real possibility comes in. And these are the ones that I'm really excited to test out as this tool starts to come out of beta. So things like, what were the line items for this contact's last closed won deal? They're calling in talking about products. I want to know specifically what they bought the last time they bought from us. Or who was the last person on our team to email this contact? Who's been corresponding with them? How long ago was that correspondence? Maybe is this contact registered for our next marketing event? We track our marketing events in HubSpot. If they're not registered, I want to know if they're registered so that I can give them a nice little invite right here if they're not. Or maybe what was this contact's most recent satisfaction score? Is this contact happy the last time they talked to us? Are they a little bit upset? What am I getting into here in this call? So those are the types of questions that I think having all the context of your CRM data available to AI and being able to interact with that in real time, this I think is the real promise of a CRM with AI built in. All right, one more calling update, and then we'll switch gears here. Lots of quality of life updates for our emails and calls in HubSpot this month. So IVR is those calling menus. So if you call into a company and you get that kind of automated menu and you're pressing a key to advance to a specific department or something like that, that's been available to us in HubSpot for a couple months. And this month they're giving us some updates. So there's 2 updates here. Now, instead of just having one menu, you can have submenus. So try not to have too many submenus. Nobody wants to talk to a robot for too long. But if you do have kind of an advanced calling tree, you can now have submenus. And then they're also giving us some basic reporting here as to where our calls are being routed. So which branches are getting the largest percentage of our calls, which branches maybe aren't being used at all, so we can optimize that and create a nice experience for customers. So for example, maybe if your third option is getting the most volume, maybe you move that up to your first option so that people don't have to listen to such a long menu before they find the option they want. So that would be an example of how you can use some of this reporting data to create a better customer experience. Okay, moving off of calls, this is another one that does require a developer, but unlocks quite a bit of potential for you in HubSpot. So if you have data that lives elsewhere, third-party app, app that you don't have integrated, app that you have integrated, but it's not pumping all of the data into HubSpot for whatever reason, but you want to see some of those data in reports. What HubSpot is doing now is they're making it easy to add reports that look like HubSpot reports. These can be bar reports or line graph reports. And you can add them into the custom UI cards. So developer makes these custom UI cards, and then you add them to record pages in HubSpot. So the custom UI cards aren't new, but the ability to add these HubSpot looking charts based on third-party data into those charts. That's what's new. So you can display that third-party data directly in HubSpot, even if that data doesn't live on any objects in HubSpot. So nice little tool there to display that other data and be able to use HubSpot. It's kind of your one source of truth for going in and finding information for some of your teams. All right, and then another update here for us for workflows. So this is not a new capability in workflows. It's actually a restriction of capabilities, but it is helping us kind of better manage, better administer our CRMs. So if you have an enterprise level HubSpot, you can control permissions down to the property level. So for a specific property, you can say, only certain folks on our team can view or edit this property. Up until now, there was kind of a workaround where if they went into a record, they could only view or edit that. They couldn't view or edit that property. They didn't have permissions. But if they could create a workflow, they would edit it, or they could edit a workflow that edited that property. And that's what they're changing now, is they're restricting that. So if you don't have permissions to edit a property, you can no longer create a workflow step that would edit that property. And if there's a workflow that already edits that property, those users can no longer go in and edit that workflow. So change there. It is still in public beta, but it'll just make sure that the performance in HubSpot or the capabilities in HubSpot match those permissions that you have set up and kind of would expect there. All right, we're about to move into some Hub specific updates. We've got a couple updates for Marketing Hub, some really exciting updates for Commerce Hub and Service Hub. But before we get into there, just one more shout out. We do 2 webinars a month. So we've got a couple coming up here in about a month. So November 20th, Ali is going to be coming to us with our next Flywheel Fuel series. This is a series where we pick a specific HubSpot tool, dive in deep, and show you how to use that to get more value. This month, we're going all in on dashboards. So November 20th, check that out with Ali. And then I'm back to our normal schedule, first Wednesday of every month on December 4th. We'll be talking about all of the updates that HubSpot drops in November. Nice early holiday present for you. You can sign up for one or both of those at simplestrat.com/webinars, and we hope to see you there. But don't leave yet. We've got some exciting Hub-specific updates, starting with a single update for Content Hub for our folks that are using podcasting. So HubSpot, for a while now, has been able to host podcasts, report on podcasts, all that good stuff. One of the kind of interesting features is taking text and using AI voices to actually turn a blog post or other types of text into a podcast episode. With a new update here is you can now have 2 voices. So if you want kind of 2 little AI hosts to volley back and forth, you can do that. I've actually heard a podcast made this way. It wasn't a HubSpot one yet. It was before they launched this feature. I was kind of impressed. I was like, oh, this is interesting. How was that like personality back and forth? So obviously very specific use cases that you'd want to use this for. You're not going to want to use it for all types of podcasts. But a pretty cool thing to at least go in and play with if podcasting is something that you're interested in, and leveraging AI to kind of repurpose your content more broadly is something you're interested in. All right, moving to some use cases that I think are more applicable. This next one, if you follow my Orange Admin newsletter on LinkedIn, you've probably seen it as one of my weekly updates of the week. And that is that we can now add personalization tokens to URLs inside of our marketing emails. So for our buttons and our images, specifically the link that contacts navigate to when they click on that image, we can add personalization tokens in there. So the most obvious use case for that is if you have a URL or a link stored in a property for a contact record. So that might be for things like a personalized offer for an e-commerce site, or if you're using ABM and you've got account-specific landing pages for your larger target accounts, maybe it's branded for them, or the content is kind of specially curated for them. Maybe you've got a customer portal link. We've got thunder here. Sorry if y'all can hear that. I don't know how good Zoom is at cutting out thunder in the background noise, but customer portal link that's unique to them, or maybe a little more old-fashioned customer portal link, a little more low-tech. You maybe got a Google Shared Drive or something like that you're sharing with a service client, and you've got a link to that that you want to be able to include in emails. So those personalized links are a fairly obvious use case for that, and it'll be a nice update for that. But there is a little bit of a less obvious use case for this that our team has used a couple times, and that is using a static link. So the link itself isn't personalized. So this is just a link to our contact page, for example. But then using URL parameters with personalization tokens to pre-fill a form on the page they would go to. So in this example, if they went to our contact page via this link, the contact page, the contact form's email address field will be pre-populated with their email address. So you can do this with hidden fields. You can do this with public fields. We've done all kinds of use cases where we're pre-populating fields. So this is a nice little use case for that, using those personalization tokens, making that easy. All right, another update to emails, and we'll move on to our sales and service hubs here. So the drag and drop email builder has been available for us in HubSpot for quite a while. It's very easy to use, and folks are a big fan. I don't see too many clients using kind of the old-fashioned hard-coded templates anymore, and I'd love to see it. But what this update is this allowing us to have kind of a middle ground here. So if you want to kind of lock down specific parts of your template, maybe you want the header to always be the same, or maybe you want the call to action on the bottom to always be the same, you can have a hard-coded template that specifies specific things that aren't editable, or at least aren't rearrangeable. I don't know if that's a word, but it is now, on the front end of building the email. But then also add drag and drop areas into the template. So in those areas, marketers can drag and drop and edit however they'd want to. You can leave a blank drag and drop area, or you can kind of pre-fill a drag and drop area with modules if you want to make it even easier for the marketers. So a great way to give marketers some flexibility while maintaining brand consistency in areas that you really want to, and give them kind of the best of both worlds there. All right, Sales Hub. We talked about quite a few updates in the All Hub and Multi-Hub sections that apply to Sales Hub. So we only have one update here that applies only to Sales Hub, and that's going to be for our folks that are on the go using the mobile app. Right now, this public beta is only out for iOS, but typically it rolls out to Android, or whichever goes first. It rolls out to the second very, very quickly thereafter. So I would expect to see this coming to Android soon. But this is, HubSpot released an update a little while ago where you can kind of choose your home experience for the mobile app. And so you can choose a sales or sales manager experience. If you choose that experience, this new widget is available to you. It's called this lead summary widget. So this is looking at the lead object. And if you're using that lead object in the prospecting workspace, or what's now called the sales workspace, if you're using that beta, it'll give you some summary analytics about the leads that are assigned to you. So how many new leads do you have? How many leads do you have in each stage? And then you can click on the number there and go straight into that list of leads. So a nice way to get that information at a glance and take action on that, work those leads from the road very, very easily in the mobile app. All right, we've got lots of updates to Service Hub. So Service Hub is a hub that I think has gotten just a really huge glow up over the last couple of years. If it's been a while since you've looked at Service Hub, or if you've never looked at Service Hub, whether you have another system that you're using for service tickets or not, I really, really think it's time to look at Service Hub again. Happy to talk to you about how to leverage it for your business. There's some nice quality of life updates here, nothing kind of ground shaking, but just things that are going to make life a little bit easier. This first one, though, is something they're taking away. So this is a sunset. You used to be able to automatically assign tickets to users in your account that had a sales seat. So they had a paid sales seat, didn't have a paid service seat. You could automatically assign tickets to them. That is going away. They have to have a service seat now to get tickets, which honestly is kind of what you'd expect. Tickets are a Service Hub feature, but that is a change that they're now enforcing that wasn't enforced when they first launched Help Desk. All right, now to the stuff they're giving you. So this is another cool way that HubSpot is kind of mixing AI with the information, like the call transcript, while the call is happening. So if you have Service Hub Professional Enterprise, it's in private beta now, but it'll be rolling out publicly eventually. You can use the customer agent tools. This is one of those Breeze agents that HubSpot announced at Inbound to add specific web pages, landing pages, blogs, knowledge base articles, other public URLs. And based on the context of the conversation, AI will surface relevant content. This kind of weird example that's going through here, if the caller was talking about 501 darts, HubSpot might surface a knowledge base article about 501 darts. This is an example from HubSpot. I don't even know what 501 darts is. I'm not a darts player. So hopefully you can think of some examples that are a little more relevant to your business, or maybe somebody on here sells darts. But it's pretty cool to be able to say, okay, while we're having the call, surface content right here that can help me service this customer while I'm still talking to them. So pretty cool AI update there. This is our second Microsoft Teams update, so we can sync tickets to Microsoft Teams. And if you hear this about Microsoft Teams and you're a Slack user, you can also do this on Slack. That's been out for a little while now. But what it allows you to do is send notifications to Microsoft Teams when a new ticket comes in. You don't have to use a workflow to do that anymore. And you can have conversations on that ticket thread in Microsoft Teams, and it integrates with the comment thread in HubSpot for that ticket. So comments in HubSpot on that ticket will show up in Microsoft Teams. Microsoft Teams messages related to that ticket will show up as comments. So nice way to collaborate on tickets for Microsoft Teams and have all that available to you in HubSpot. You can also now do ticket splitting. So just like it sounds, you get a help desk conversation in, and you want to split that into multiple tickets. Now you can just go to the actions, drop down on the ticket in help desk, hit split ticket, choose if you want to kind of split up the messages into those different tickets, fill in some fields, and you're good to go. So some use cases for this ticket splitting. The first one's probably pretty obvious, and then kind of what is the thing that people think of first. So customer reaches out to you and maybe they've got two issues that they're talking about in their outreach to you, in their form submission to their email that open the ticket. You can now split that ticket. So maybe it needs to be handled by separate teams, or you want those issues tracked separately. One might be easy to resolve, one might be more difficult, for example. So you can split that up and work them separately. The other use case, though, is actually probably the more common use case. We see this happen all the time where we've got an email thread associated to a ticket, we solve the issue, customer's happy. A month later, 2 months later, they have a new issue. And instead of submitting a new ticket, they go back to that email thread and send in a new email. Totally different issue, same thread, same ticket in HubSpot. Now we can very easily split off this new issue into a new ticket, work that separately, leave that first one closed. All right, last tickets update, then we'll wrap up with some Commerce Hub updates, one Operations Hub update, and open it up to questions here. So our rule performance and matching tools here allow us to set some rules that automatically route those tickets in help desk for you enterprise. So we can get pretty complicated with these rules. The rules aren't new, but what is new is we can now see how many tickets went to each of those kind of routing conditions by count and percent. And then we can click on that rule to see a list of all those tickets. So just an easier way to kind of see how our rules are performing and actually affecting the tickets that are coming in. All right, no more Service Hub updates. Big updates to Commerce Hub. At Simple Strat, we use HubSpot to process our payments. A lot of our clients use quoting and invoicing, even if they're not using HubSpot to collect payments. We have some big updates to Commerce Hub that are just going to make all of that much easier. So the first one is just a little quality of life update, helping people save some clicks. So when you're managing line items on a deal, it's now much, much easier to create invoices, payment links, and subscriptions from directly in this line item screen. No more saving out our line items, going back to deals, then creating a payment link or invoice, or having to remember which tool to go into first to make the fastest flow. Just saving us some clicks for our salespeople that are putting these links together. So a little update, a big time savings there. And this is a big update with even bigger time savings. So it is in private beta for now, but really, really excited about this one. We can now store payment methods for future charges. So with a customer's consent, they have to consent to this, but we can save their credit card info or their ACH. HubSpot obviously is going to store that very securely. You can't like go in and see their credit card number, but we can use it for future charges with a customer's consent, as long as that's outlined in our terms. So some use cases for this that I'm really excited about, and this is something that we'll be using to streamline some flows for our customers inside of Simple Strat. But retainer upsells, I think, is going to be huge for, especially for service-based businesses that have those retainers. Maybe you sell additional hours in a month, and you don't have to wait for a customer to go in and re-enter the same credit card info or re-enter the same ACH info. With their permission, you can just charge the credit card method that you already have on file. Maybe your retainer involves consumables that need to be purchased occasionally. Maybe you've got one-time upsells on that retainer that you want to be able to charge that doesn't make sense to build into the subscription, but you want to be able to charge them. Frequent reorders, so things that, maybe you don't have a subscription-based business, but your customers come back and buy the same things or similar things from you again and again. You can make that easier for them and you by saving that payment method. And then renewals is going to be a huge one. So if your renewals often involve changes in pricing and terms and things like that, you could give them the option to just set up that renewal on that saved payment method rather than having to go through that whole process again. So nice time-saving update there, both for you and your customers. All right, this one is in private beta, so I don't have a picture for this one. I wasn't able to get into it before I had to do the webinar. But this one is going to make it much easier for us to collect on our HubSpot invoices. So we can now set up automated email reminders, no workflows required. It's just a setting. We can set up to 5 reminders for invoices. And those reminders can be on the due date, up to 7 days before the due date, and up to 99 days after the due date. So set up the invoice. HubSpot's going to handle the reminders and help make sure we collect on those invoices as quickly as possible. All right, one more update, and then we'll turn it over to Alexis to help us through our Q&A here. This is an Operations Hub update, and it's going to be another update that helps us kind of manage our merges, but this one's going to be related to duplicates. So in the duplicates tool, HubSpot's shows us records that it thinks might be duplicate. We have the opportunity to either merge those records or reject that. When we reject it, we say, no, these aren't actually duplicates. Occasionally, though, somebody from our team gets in there and rejects a bunch of things they weren't supposed to reject, or we accidentally hit the reject button, and maybe that's worth a second look. So now what we can do is we can now review all of the rejected pairs, just kind of a double check to go back in there and make sure that anything we rejected really wasn't a duplicate, so that we can help keep our data clean. So that is duplicate management tools available to people outside of Operations Hub, but this specific tool is an Operations Hub professional or enterprise only. All right, and with that, I will take a much needed drink of water and pass it over to Alexis to help us through our Q&A.